Hey, how's it going? My name is Benji and welcome back to the channel. This is the start of a new series where I'm going to talk about music that I listened to this last month. So let's jump into it. Fortets 3, released March of 2024. So this one's a little bit of cheating because I listened to it when it first came out and then I re-listened to it this month to kind of get some thoughts together for this series because I wanted to start with something that was new, but I was also a little bit familiar with to just kind of start strong there. So a little bit of a cheating. But so this is Fortet's new LP from earlier this year. For those of you who don't know, I am a massive fan of Fortet, so would you be surprised? I enjoyed this record. I thought it was pretty darned good. There are some things that some people might not like about this record. I'm going to do a little bit of defense on it and then move on there. This record is a bit of a return to a much more groovy sound for Kieran. He's doing something that's very self-reflective and very much based on these kind of chilled, laid-back grooves. You'll have a song like Skater, which has this really clean, kind of almost post-rock inspired guitar line, a lot of chorus on it. It's kind of really interesting with these really settled back groovy drums. You're also going to have a song like Loved, which is very kind of dreamy, flowy, and yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff coming out of this record. Now, I've heard some criticisms that it feels a bit phoned in. I disagree, and I would love to talk about why. It is very much like kind of standard Fortet. Like there is a sound to it that it's undeniable. It's his record. But I don't think that just means it was thrown together. There's some actual really cool things about this record. One thing I've noticed is that he's repurposing some of his old stuff. So his 2017 record, New Energy, has a song called Scientist, which is a great song. Love it. Very bouncy track. He takes those synth pads and he uses them on the song Storm Crystals, which is a very different vibe. It's almost an ambient track. It's very pulled back. It's very spacious. And hearing those pads recontextualize doesn't feel like picking something and putting it somewhere else because you think it would be nice. It feels very intentional. It feels very much like he's re-examining his older work in this different context here, a much more groovy, rhythmic-based feel. And for me, it actually kind of makes me look at his career a little bit differently. And to me, that tells me that he's moving in a much more subtle direction. I'm happy to be wrong if he moves in a different direction as well, but that's kind of, to me, what this is telling me is that this is him kind of reflecting on what brought him to where he is now and just sitting in that space. And the whole record has this very kind of introspective, reflective feel that as I kind of went through the record, I just kind of kept feeling like this was a bit of an intentional pullback to be like, I want to be in this place and sit in this place and live in this place for a little bit. And I really, really enjoyed that. So those are my words on Fortet's 3. Definitely give it a listen if you haven't listened to it. By the way, if you see me looking off camera, I have my phone that I have my notes on. So that's kind of what I'm pulling up as I'm talking about things. Vegyn, The Road to Hell is Paved with Good Intentions, released April of 2024. I've had to restart this video because I got kind of wound up talking about this and I just didn't have any consistent through line that I was going through. So I'm going to try to be a little bit better. I have a lot of thoughts on this record. I guess I will start off by saying my main thought is it is good. It is a good record that I think you should listen to. I think that there's a lot of really cool things that are happening on this record, but there are some problems that get under my skin specifically. And if you can overlook those problems, I think that this record is going to be like a fantastic record for you. But if you're like me, it will leave you very conflicted in a couple of different ways. Let me talk about some of the things that I really like about this record. The vocal features all over the record are fantastic, especially John Glacier's vocals on the first track, A Dream Goes On Forever, and then the 9th track in the front. Both of these songs are hypnotic. They're incredible. I love how the record just starts off with this feature because it knows how good of a statement that is. There's just something really intense and punchy. Her delivery is both incredibly intense but also laid back. It's very intentional in a really cool way. It kind of rides on the beat. It feels like it's maybe even time stretched a little bit, and it just kind of leads to this very drunk, slurpy, slurry feel, but with a lot of intention and push behind it. And I think it's incredible. I also think that the other song that she features on has, again, a really cool feel to it. It's kind of like an extension of that, but there's also the lyrical content and the way that the beat will kind of go in and out to enhance different lyrical parts of that song is really, really stellar. Another song that's great is Makeshift Tourniquet. It is just a house song, but it's a really good house song. The 4 on the floor kick drives the song, the slightly off-kilter kind of triplet feeling synthesizer stabs. It just like, to me, it's just like, it's about as perfect as a house song can get. It's not anything that's going to take your head off and blow you away in the sense of doing something new and radical and different, but I think that it's better because it's not doing anything new, radical, or different. It's just doing the formula so well. And it's definitely the most replayed track for me. If I'm driving down the road and I want to listen to something that's just going to kind of get me going in a really positive mood, I turn this track on. It's just fantastic. And even the tracks that I am going to have some critiques on are good tracks, melodically, tonally. There's a lot of really great ideas all over this record, and they're mostly pulled off really, really well. But there are problems. There are problems that I have, and I wonder if it's just me overthinking things or if other people feel the same way. So, for example, on the song Turn Me Inside, featuring Leah Sen, again, the vocals are great. It's this very subdued, soft vocal, a lot of reverb on it, but the vocal itself feels forward and warm, and the beat around it is very pulled back and restrained, and there's some really nice bit crushed things in each ear, and it sounds very like textural and very fun. And hearing this really far forward vocal, the more I hear it, I'm just like, I wish that it was EQ'd a little different to sit with the track a little bit better. Maybe the volume brought down, maybe just not as warm, because I think that this vocal really is in a beautiful, light, and airy place, and so to hear it feel so strong and forward, it just rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't kill the track for me, but every time I go back and I hear that vocal, I'm kind of like, this is so close to being something that really gels in a really perfect way, and it just stands out a little bit. And the biggest problems I have are on the song The Path Less Traveled. I don't know if it just wasn't mastered correctly or something, but it feels so empty when it comes to the rest of the track. There's this really nice low-end feeling fill that's like a bass kind of fill that happens about every 4 bars. And that fills out the low end in a really nice way. And then it disappears, and the actual bass, it just feels too low. It feels like there's something that should be hitting the subs. The kick's not really hitting the subs. The bass isn't hitting the subs in that sort of way. It just feels a little bit thin. And I'd be more okay with it if there wasn't a moment in the song where the bass cuts out to kind of do like a dynamic change. And I didn't notice it till like the third time I heard the song. I went, oh, that's what's happening here. The bass is cutting out. Because the bass was so low, I could barely hear that it had left. And it's like, that's just, to me, it's like that feels like you've kind of not wasted potential per se, but there's something that could have been greater. But despite all these negative things I have to say, I still think it's a really great record. I think that there's a lot of awesome trip hop style moments on it. Like some parts I'm like, this could have come off a Björk record back in the 90s. Like, it just feels good. So definitely worth your time, but there are just some things that are holding it back. And the more that I sit with them, the more they just kind of bug me. And again, this is probably just a me problem, but it's how I feel. All Hands Make Light, Darling the Dawn, released April of 2023. So this project is a member of Godspeed You Black Emperor and someone else. So it's Ephraim Manuel Menuick and Ariel Engel. And it is their kind of drony, kind of post-rock, kind of synthy. It's a lot of different things. There's some psyche elements in it. So it's kind of hard to nail down. It's an experimental rock record. And it is really cool. I really enjoyed this record. There's this problem that I find a lot of times with any sort of rock record or rock adjacent record that has synthesizers is there's this sort of thing where a lot of times the people just don't know how to use them correctly. And just oftentimes it can end up sounding really flat. It can end up sounding really forced. And this record, one of the best reasons you should listen to it is because it is such a great example of sounding natural with synthesizers, which is difficult. It's difficult to make something feel like an organic part of the band, but it does that super, super well. And one of the reasons that it does that is there's not a lot of, if any, not a lot of guitar on these records. It's really mostly going to be drums and these really warm, psychedelic 60s and 70s inspired synthesizers. And it's just fantastic. Another thing that is really cool about the record is the vocals. They are the two different vocal styles between Ephraim and Ariel are really interesting to hear contrast. Ariel has this really deep, commanding vocal tone, but also it has a sense of her kind of holding herself back a little bit. Like it feels like she's just very confident where she's sitting and that she could push further, but she just ends up sitting in a really comfortable space. Whereas Ephraim is doing a lot of really interesting wailing noises. There's a lot of really interesting kind of shouted, kind of yelled, kind of sung, sustained notes that he'll throw in, and it ends up creating this really interesting texture between the two of them, trading off vocal duties in different songs, bringing in different textural tonal palettes, and I really, really like that. One of the highlight tracks is "We Live on a Fucking Planet," and "Baby, That's the Sun." Great track name. And it is an absolute highlight of this record. It starts with these really far away droning toms kind of repeating a pattern with these very gentle synthesizer and vocals start building up. It's a very traditionally post-rock song. It's about 10 minutes long. It is a song all about the dynamic growth throughout the track. Starts off very subtle, ends in a beautiful psychedelic cascade of synthesizers, wailing vocals, drums that come crashing through the mix. It's really incredible. And I also kind of miss talking about this when I was talking about the tonal palette of the record. The drumming is fantastic. It's very reserved, but in this track specifically, it really doesn't pull any punches. It's very strong, forward, and really impactful, and it carries the song in a really, really cool way. Honestly, my only problem with this record is the fact that this track is second on the record. It feels like such an important statement, and it feels like such a masterful growth and high point for the record, and the rest of the record falls into a much more subtle approach. The crescendos don't get to these quite as dynamic of a high, quite as interesting, and the low points of the record, it ends up kind of floating in those low to middle points. And there's still dynamics and crescendos, but it just doesn't hit quite the same as having that track second there. So definitely still worth a listen. This record is absolutely fantastic, absolutely worth your time. You're just a bad cat. This record is absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely worth your time. It just peaks a little bit early, but it still doesn't mean that what comes afterward is not good or even great from time to time. There's still some really fantastic songs, so I would highly recommend a listen. No Man, Glitter and Spit, released March 2024. All right, this is something different. These past couple records have been electronic, a lot of that stuff, all that's out the window. We are in heavy, heavy hardcore, and this record blasts. This is so good. It is No Man is a band from the DC area, so I need to catch them. They're like not far away from me. I need to catch them next time they're in the area, because this record is just, the guitars that start off the record are a little bit more sludgy, a little bit more ugly than you would hear on a normal hardcore record. They're a little thinner, and it leaves room for the bass to really take a forward spot with a lot of these songs. The bass is huge and massive. The drums are just absolutely aggressive and pummeling. The vocals are vicious. You can just feel every emotion coming through. It's really just an incredible experience. I don't know really how much I can say other than, if you like heavy music, you should listen to this. And if you don't like heavy music, you should probably still give it a try, because it will surprise you. There's a lot of really cool dynamics in this record. The big problem with a lot of kind of heavy bands that I see around is that they kind of go for it. It just kind of punches all the time. Or they'll like take things down for like, here's a quiet song or something that's a little bit more traditional sounding. But in that case, it kind of feels like they've compromised. This doesn't feel anything like that. It feels like every different step and every different dynamic thing is very measured and very intentional to maximize those really heavy, punchy moments. And there's some really cool experimentation. The last track on this record is basically like an acoustic, weird, noisy acoustic kind of strange experience there, kind of like an outro, but it's like a full song length. The song before that is like a psych rock song. Instead of being screamed in harsh vocals, they're pretty much sung for most of this track, and if not all the track, and is just really good as a psych rock track. But then you have songs like God's Neighborhood, March Divides, and Can't Kill Us All, which I think are kind of like the three central parts to the record. That middle section is really where the record comes through and really hits hard, and I just can't say enough good things. I don't listen to as much heavy music as I want to, but this is just phenomenal. And again, I can't wait till they come near my area so I can see them live, because it's fantastic. Still House Plants, If I Don't Make It, I Love You, released April of 2024. So this is the most recent record that I've listened to. It's a bit more fresh in my mind, and I don't know if I fully solidified all my thoughts on it, so I might do a little bit of a catch-up next month. I might not, if my feelings don't really change on it. But I think that this is, if there's one record you're going to listen to, make it this one. This is a wild experimental record. It's a band that's very new to me. I'd never heard of them, and I turned it on and it just kind of sucked me in. And it is a record that definitely demands an attentive listen. This isn't something that you can put on in the background. You end up needing to focus a lot on the music because it's pretty in-depth and pretty intense in ways that you might not expect. It's not intense in the sense that it's a hardcore record, or it's not intense in the sense that the lyrics are emotionally destructive, although they are very impassioned and very strong, and I did feel very affected at certain points throughout the record. But for me, it's more just the kind of cacophonous approach that they take to this record is really, really impressive. So it's a 3-person band, vocals, guitar, and drums. No bass, but I didn't miss the bass. And it's really hard to make a record punch without having bass, but they did a really, really good job on this record with that. The vocals on this record are something that may take some people some time to adjust to. They are very deep and haunting and throaty and soulful. They're also not always in time with the rest of the band. It doesn't mean that they're out of time because it feels very intentional. But they're not always in time with the rest of the band. They're not always pleasing to the ear. They can be very caustic and combative in a really strange way for me to put into words. It's kind of hard to describe without hearing it. Just the depth and aching sorrow that you can feel coming from these vocals. The guitar is very sloppily strummed, and it kind of adds to this swirling feeling from these not always traditional time signatures or these change-ups that happen. So it's very loose on top with that vocal element and the guitar element not always matching up, but it leads to those moments that when it does match up, when something does hit, it feels like a vindication of the time you've spent going towards that moment. It's that sort of spinning feeling of like, man, I hope that this ends up paying off, and it always does. It always pays off in a really interesting way, and no small part of that is the drumming is just locked in. The drummer knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's cooking. He's really solid. He has a really good sense of how to keep a center to the record, and it makes all of these kind of washing and combative and very different elements. Please stop attacking my plant. It makes all these very intense, strange guitar and vocal elements end up feeling really cohesive because the drums are really the core of what's happening here, and everything else just floats along on top of it. And it's just fantastic. This is definitely a record for fans of experimental and kind of post-rock, math rock, that type of thing. The way I described it to one of my friends was, imagine if Slint had a vocalist who went to art school. That feels pretty accurate to me. It is definitely in that atonal, mathy, clean guitar sound, but I just, again, I cannot recommend enough for people to listen to this record. I'm only a couple days off of listening to it, and I just want to listen again and again and again. It really is just something special. So that is what I listened to this last month. It's not a lot because I started kind of keeping track of these about midway through the month, so next month's going to be a little bit more to talk about there, but I'm really excited to hear what you guys think, hear what you guys have been listening to this month, and hear what you want me to listen to next month. Thanks so much for watching. Again, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. If you want to see this next month, hit that bell icon. It'll be coming out the first of the month every month, so looking forward to that. Been a while. Glad to be back. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.